This video is sponsored by the Night Library. Camouflage, a highly versatile method of nature which for millions of years have been used as deception, both for defense as well as aggression. In the tough, cruel and unforgiving world of predator versus prey, the ability to hide and blend in with one's surroundings will often be the determining factor between missed opportunity and effectively dispatching unsuspecting prey. What's perceived as insignificant on the surface can often be misleading and a treacherous misrepresentation of the horrors that lurk beneath. Words so true that you would be hard-pressed to find a case where it applied more than when it came to the menacing evil that prowled the shallow waters of the Louisiana bayous. The water devil, as it was appropriately named by the hunters, was the horrible amalgamation of something as simple as spoiled food, the recklessness of two hunters, and the intervention of devious Mephistophelian manipulation. Initially thought to be a single entity, such as an eel, thorough research would conclude that this horrific creature was something else. While difficult to determine at first glance, it would be revealed that the water devil was several, or rather thousands, of small worms or tentacle-like monsters, all crowded together in a singular, cohesive hive mind, all working together for one and only purpose: unrelenting consumption. Its contraception or creation goes back to two hunters named Harpo and Beef Rat. The two were known to be somewhat careless people, reckless even, both with a well-known love for expensive spirits, preferring to fill their cups instead of their stomachs. This would often leave them starving, resorting to scrounging and scavenging, and ultimately the ingestion of food of questionable quality. One fateful day, before venturing into the dead zone, the two hunters, down on their luck as usual, confined to their drunken stupors, would in their lack of better judgment consume rotten and wormy food, having spent the last of their money the day prior on strong spirits. Upon entering the zone, the two would immediately notice a lack of activity from the other side when channeling sight. Hearing and feeling nothing, they thought the zone to be dead. Maybe they were too late, or maybe someone had already claimed the bounty, or maybe the corruption had just up and left, finally leaving Louisiana for good. Either way, the two decided to camp out next to a small river for a while, as they felt like they weren't getting anywhere, and both of them seemed to feel slightly ill. Realizing they probably shouldn't have ingested rotten food, their stomachs upset to no end led them both to turn pale, while nausea and a disturbing trembling slowly took over their bodies. During this short break, the two hunters sitting in their camp were unaware that they were being watched. From across the river, two hunters by the name of Jonas and Gator had been eyeing them for quite some time. Harpo and Beef Rat conversed, fearing that the flu might finally have caught up with them. They both complained about wailing pain in their insides, and almost as if cued by the words themselves, a slow, agonizing pain began creeping through their entire bodies, as Harpo suddenly noticed thick lumps forming underneath his skin, seeming to be crawling among his flesh and blood. In the same second, he fell to the ground dead as a shot rang out from the other side of the river. Though sick and in horrible pain, Beef Rat lunged to his feet and took off, leaving his former partner behind without any hesitation. Before we move on, I'd like to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, the Night Library. If you, just like me, are into Hunt Showdown, you might find this interesting. Red Hunt is an upcoming comic book series created by the Night Library and funded through Kickstarter. The creators Daniel and David have made it their mission to create a comic book inspired by the Hunt Showdown universe. This involves a western setting with guns, hunters, monsters, and a lot of blood. And you can read the very first episode of the comic book for free directly from their Kickstarter. So if you're a fan of Hunt Showdown, I highly recommend checking out Red Hunt and consider supporting their cause, as I think it's an amazing initiative. I have left a link for their Kickstarter in the description below, so go check it out. As I mentioned, the first episode of the comic is available for free. And with that said, back to the story at hand. Greedy to loot the body and secure the heart of Harpo for his further rituals, Jonas ran to the still warm body, knife at the ready, before plunging it into the chin. The knife tore through skin and sinew, crushing and cracking bones as he opened the body from head to pelvis. However, Jonas jumped back in disgust as a thick flow of white worms suddenly spilled out from the body of Harpo and onto the ground. Having devoured him from inside, the worms had already consumed most of his organs, their mouth cavities covered in blood, opening and closing in the air as they sought more flesh. Jonas reached for his rifle and fired into the thick colony of worms, turning the sand blood orange as the colony of thick goo skimmed across the bank and slid into the waters of the river that ran past the camp. Beef Rat had in a panic made it up the river and found cover behind a building next to the water, but in his last gasp of air he began convulsing. White worms began pouring from his mouth, ears, and the gaping sockets where they had eaten their way through his eyes. His corpse, eaten from the inside, plunged into the roaring river, where the screaming and screeching of ravaging worms tore through the air as they picked apart the body of Beef Rat, leaving no meat or skin left on the bones. Taken aback by what they had just witnessed, the colony of worms writhing in the river in front of them, their screams still crying out every time one of their mouths broke the surface, Gator and Jonas looked at each other. They had a choice to make. They could either fight this monster and rid the world of its existence, or leave it to feed on someone else. The two gave each other a nod and ventured into the river, where only one of them lived to tell the tale. Being in a perpetual rapid state of carnivorous rage, relentlessly attacking and devouring anything that came into its territory, the water devil existed in the Louisiana bayous as the ultimate aquatic apex predator, unrivaled and uncontested in speed, ferocity, and lethality by any other creature within the bayous, making it an adversary not to be taken lightly. It didn't take long for the water devils to hunt down and rid the swarms of fish, alligators, and any other wildlife that inhabited the murky waters of Louisiana. It suddenly seemed that no creek, shallow river, or basin any longer seemed safe to cross or venture into. With the local population of aquatic animals completely extinct, the water devils would dominate the rivers, lakes, and creeks. But now, instead of hunting, as nothing was left for them to prey on, they went into a passive, almost defensive posture, where they guarded the passings and crossings of shallow waters and rivers within the dead zone. And while experienced hunters quickly learned to watch their step and identify the subtle disturbance of the surface tension on the water, its somewhat secluded presence made it a lurking death trap for inexperienced hunters who, without knowing any better, recklessly plunged themselves into rivers and creeks without realizing they had just doomed themselves to a horrible and agonizing death as thousands of jaws and teeth tore into them. Hey there, Hazmat here. As always, I would like to give a big thanks to the Hunters Lounge, specifically Jim and El Bob, Corey Peterson, The Derivative, Kine, Goose, Doc Powell, Ham Bone, Gino Lucero, Slip, Stas B. Estek, and the Wizard of Copper, as well as Bubonic MCCC, Ape Benavides, Ghosty, Jane Doe, Jose Gonzalez, Kashi Yuka, Nightingale Far, Sir Bottoms, Spooks, The Loaf of Bread, Tim Wright, Tom Hengst, and Ulf Hjellström. If you want to support me as a creator and have a say in what part of the lore I should cover next, consider joining the Hunters Lounge for as little as $1 a month. The link is in the description below. A big thanks also goes out to the Night Library and their comic Red Hunt for sponsoring this video. You can find a link to their Kickstarter in the description as well. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.